He's gonna run it. What's up, run fans? We're at Royal Park's half. It's going to be very noisy, I think. With Vern, he's ready. I'm pacing Laura today to a 140 something. We'll see how it goes. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm thinking a low 140 is the aim. So we shall see. Very busy. We're vlogging in a big crowd of people. It's just a bit weird. Hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, let's see how it goes. What is up, run fans? We are back, but this time we are at the Royal Parks Half Marathon in London. Now, I wasn't going to be doing this race. My first proper race was going to be the Great South, which is next week, or by the time you see this video, maybe in a few days' time. And a ticket came up, and I jumped at the chance because my leg's been feeling really good, and I thought I could get a half marathon in the bag as part of my ramp up in training. Laura got in contact, who's from Pound Hill Pounders, and I must say a massive thank you to Lisa, who gave the ticket to me. And Laura wanted to run a sub 150 half marathon, and that was the perfect sort of pace for me, for where I'm at the moment, to pace her along, carry her gels, get her water, and basically be her concierge for the entire race. So we looked at the route, and I thought, brilliant, what a video this can be. So we're going to get cracking and see how we get on. We've got the Insta on the head that didn't last the entire race, sadly, but I also had the GoPro with multiple batteries. We've got the whole race covered. Hopefully you can learn some tips and tricks and be entertained by what was the greatest atmosphere at a running event I've ever experienced. It was absolutely unreal. I think Royal Parks is like the half marathon version of the London Marathon. It's absolutely fantastic. Stick around and to find out why. So, as you can see on the route, the event village is at the bottom of Hyde Park, and then we travel east, past Wellington Arch, Buckingham Palace, a few out and backs near the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben, go through Trafalgar Square a few times where there was absolutely buzzing, which you'll see in a minute. Then we travel through a load more different arches, back into Hyde Park for the majority of the second half, and I thought it was going to be a bit quieter along there, but it was absolutely buzzing along the Serpentine, crowds everywhere for a strong finish past Royal Albert Hall and back to the finish line 13.1 or 21 point something kilometres later. So there is Laura just ahead of us there in the Team Brompton vest with the red t-shirt, and the issue is already apparent of the time we started. We got there slightly late, I think, for the different waves, and for us trying to run a sub 150, we were well behind even the 220, 230 paces, I think. And so I was heavily underestimating how busy this half marathon was going to be. So we were weaving our way through, and you'll see that this is a running theme throughout this half marathon race. But Laura was absolutely amazing at going between the runners, finding the gaps, and it was really easy to pace her because we'd always be able to find each other. I just said, you go ahead and I will catch up and I will find you when we're needed and all that jazz. So yeah, absolutely brilliant by her. Luckily, lots of the first half of this race was on very wide roads. You could find lots of our way around people. But as it went on, it did get trickier and trickier. First, check in with the pace then. I'm going to be doing 5 kilometre increments instead of the 1 kilometre ones I do for my parkrun videos. Otherwise, you're going to be inundated with updates constantly. So, initial thoughts were at 5:18, 5:17, dropping down a bit. Now, the GPS was quite tricky because of all the trees and buildings of central London. And so we were really gauging off our own paces and the feel of it to begin with. Whilst the watches, and we got a bit of space when we got to the parks and stuff like that in the second half. But already we're looking pretty good, looking at our 5:14 pace and holding that nice and steady. There was lots of weaving involved, and so a few little surges, and I was a bit worried about that initially, but Laura seemed super comfortable at that sort of pace. And to be honest, as soon as we set off, I knew that 150 is probably going to be attainable, and you know, it's more of a case of how low can we go rather than hanging on for dear life for that 150. So that was a really exciting proposition for me as her pacer. As we approach and go past Buckingham Palace, you can already see the difficulties of the amount of people and the fact that we're going slightly faster than lots of people around this area is that I was losing Laura and I was weaving through and catching up. But there's plenty of space, and to be honest, it made it quite interesting, exciting to do. And you know, my main concern was it wasn't draining Laura too much, as we see the Forrest Gump crew on the right over there representing. Absolutely love it. And you can see on the top left now, we're locked into that 5:15 pace. We started out nice and slowly. We were forced to, much like the Tilgate Park runs, by the crowds, but that is absolutely no bad thing because I'm using Pace Pro on my watch during this race, and it's telling me that we're roughly on track, maybe slightly behind from the very, very slow first K that we did, but I'm confident that we're going to make that back up because that's all earned in the final kilometres, and yeah, we'll start cashing those checks in when we can. So as you just saw, we went past the 2:15 pacer there. Now we're going through Westminster Abbey, past Big Ben, wide roads. What an absolutely amazing atmosphere this is. Going through the 2-mile marker now. We're now dipping below that 5-minute kilometre pace, and it feels completely good. Laura's running form is looking absolutely spot on. The crowds are screaming. Absolutely loving life. This is such an amazing event. Nice and flat, not a breath of wind. Not really too sunny or too cold or anything like that. So yeah, we're absolutely living the dream. Okay, 3.82, one of the first turnarounds. There's a choir singing ABBA, always good for the vibes. Now, considering the tall buildings, I think the pace is looking pretty good. Oh, it's just dropped to 4:42, and yeah, that's roughly where we're at. I think we were locked in now, and I knew that, you know, a sub-5 pace could well be on the cards per kilometre, and we were just getting locked in, going through the crowds. I wasn't aware that we were going to get narrower and narrower as the race goes on. Look at that for a sight. We got Big Ben there. The church bells are ringing in whatever the tower's called. Not Big Ben itself, something else in Westminster Abbey. My London knowledge isn't that great because I prefer being as close to the sea as possible at all times, not in central London. Unless it's for an amazing half marathon, or perhaps a marathon one day. As we approach the first 5-kilometre mark, I thought I'd set out what our pacing strategy was. The first 5 kilometres we were going to break down into a nice, slow, easy ramp up. Second 5 kilometres we were just going to lock into the pace and hold it there. The third 5 kilometres from 10 to 15k we were going to hold on and keep pushing if possible. And then the final 5 kilometres plus the one extra, but that never counts, we were going to see what we had left in the tank and really push after that. So the key 5 kilometres was 10 to 15, where we're going to take stock of how Laura's feeling. You can see me here trying to take a gel from her. She was being very polite, trying to carry her own. But I was like, nope, I am your pacer. I am your concierge for the day. Hand it all to me. You just have to focus on locking in that pace and getting it nailed, which she did. Here's the first 5 kilometres then. As you can see, the first 2 kilometres were 5:32 and 5:19. So we were shipping some time then, but then we started to bring it back in the 3rd, 4th and 5th kilometres, where we're now flirting with that 5 minutes per kilometre pace. We were really enjoying the atmosphere, and as you can see, as we approach Trafalgar Square, through all the runners, we can hear a bit of Queen playing, and the vibe is certainly increasing the more and more and we go in. So we're settling to that first one, and now have a little look, see what this atmosphere is like. Here we go, take it all in. Absolutely brilliant. Yes! Okay then, we're now running along the Strand at another one of the out and backs. Mr. Flagman, not sure what he's representing, but good luck to him. It's always a bit harder with a sail on your back, especially when there's no wind. Laura's just up there ahead on the left. We were settling in now to our second 5k from, 6 to 10 kilometres. This was all about just getting into that locked in pace, and we were doing brilliant with that. We were still weaving through. Laura's form is absolutely perfect as usual, and we're just trundling along nicely, getting ready for when it starts to hurt in the second half. I think this shot gives quite a good idea of exactly what it was like, where Laura's on one side, I'm on the other, and we're both weaving through at the same sort of pace, getting it done, making sure that that pace is still locked in and nice and consistent around that 5 minutes per kilometre pace. Now, Laura didn't know what the times were. I said, leave all the pacing to me. And so she was just doing it all by feel, and I was guiding her whether we needed to speed up or slow down. But we were completely on the same page, so she was so easy to pace at this point. We were just going along at that lovely, easy pace, you know, just below that threshold, ready to kick on when needed. And here we go, approaching the King's driveway, loving life. We're at 4:49 pace. We've really settled in now. The crowds are nice and large, so it's really good for the motivation. And we're now starting to look ahead towards that 10 to 15 kilometre section. I know that we can hold this pace nice and easy now, so it's getting ready for that second half and to really push on. It's a really good example of just how busy it can get, because this is the 2:05 pace group, and it really did swell when you approach these ones. Luckily we got to it at quite a large part of the road, but as you can see from Mr. Orange Hat Man here, taking the suboptimal line there, we ended up running about 400 metres further than the 21.2 kilometres, which I think is what the half marathon distance is. I forget after 21, then you just carry on until you finish. But yeah, very difficult at times. And yeah, with a whole mixture of paces going on, it was tricky. Quick shout out for this guy, the best dressed man in London on that day. Good times. As we approach the Serpentine and then the 10 kilometre mark, you can really see that the crowds are just absolutely endless. All the amazing signs that are going on. I'll pause it on a few in a minute just to get a bit of a vibe of what was going on. Everyone was writing their names on the front of their bibs, and the support, I mean, I had light it up on mine, so people were a bit confused as that could be possibly my name. But Laura was certainly getting shout outs like every 30 seconds or so. People were constantly giving her encouragement, and it really did make a difference. It was absolutely brilliant. So as you can see here, this is the last instalment on the Insta that we've got, because the battery absolutely died, because it's absolute loser vibes at the moment because of a firmware update. Hopefully that'll get sorted and we'll be able to get a lot more footage on board with the POV stats, etc. But the GoPro's doing a good job to make up for that. So Serpentine on our left, trying to make our way through. We're sticking to that 4:55 pace, absolutely flying under that 5:15 by miles. And I'm picking up from Laura that she's going to be able to hold on to it, so we're looking really good. Here's the 10 kilometre mark then. The last 5k we've done is 5:05, 4:53, 4:56, 4:57, 4:58, metronomic. Pacing is absolutely on point, but I can't really take much credit for that. Laura is pacing ahead herself. I'm just running with her, holding her gels, making sure she's okay, giving her as much encouragement as possible, and just being there to really push her along. So hopefully she was feeling that, and I was some help at all. I get so much pleasure from pacing. I really enjoy it. So rewarding, and yeah, it's really fantastic. Here's me missing a high five from a drag queen, and then also some fella doing a bit of cross country. I don't know if he was part of the race or he was just loving life on his local run, but here he comes, in he goes. Nice work. So just after that 7-mile marker, so we're well over halfway now, and we're really starting to dig in. We're into the parks where the paths are getting more and more narrow. So it's getting a little bit trickier to overtake people, but the further we get up, the quicker people are seeming to run, which is really good. We're hopefully going to pass the 2-hour pace group soon as well, and then we can keep kicking on. As you can see here, the paths are narrow, but it did open up without any barriers and stuff like that, so it was easy to overtake on the outside. It was nice and dry. I was in my trail shoes anyway, so it was absolutely perfect. So I would go around the outside, and then that would leave a bit of space for Laura to come through the middle. The only downhill of the entire event, there wasn't really any uphills, to be honest. There was one slight incline and going up Constitution Hill or something like that, but very slight, whereas this was an actual downhill. So that was quite fortunate that there was no steep inclines to sort of zap the pace out your legs or anything like that. So yeah, from a pacer's point of view, it was absolutely perfect course. Couldn't be better. Right, here's a bit of a pinch point here where I nearly trip over this man trying to see his loved ones. How dare I? There's a nice little tight turn around here, and then a small little another downhill, and then we're on to the final third of the race where we can really do some damage to this PB.
Right, over halfway. Doing well. Laura's smashing it. we're going to push on in a minute. Last 5k, pretty crack on. 6 miles over there. We're way past that. We're like 8 or 9 miles. It is so busy. It is just amazing, but hard to run a easy pacing. Because you've got to accelerate and dipping and diving.
Now, anyone that's run a running event before will know the chaos that ensues at any water stop, and Royal Parks was no different. There were people walking, people darting in from left and right. So I just said to Laura, you carry on running, I'll deal with the water, and then I can catch you back up. So here I am with the squeeze method. She didn't take the first couple of water stops, but then I made her drink, even though it wasn't that hot and sunny. They were good to just get a bit of water on the go and on board. Yeah, so as we're drinking that, the Colombian Massive, absolutely loving life, cheering on their fellow runner. Well done to them.
Yes.
At this point, we were very, very deep into the third quarter of the marathon, approaching that 15-kilometer mark, getting ready to really push on. Laura was starting to hurt now, but I said that's completely normal. You want to be feeling at that point. It means you're pacing it just right. Here we go. What a sign that is. Absolutely brilliant. There were so many fantastic signs and supporters. It was really, really fantastic to watch. There we are then. We've got 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15th kilometres there. 5:03, 4:59, 5:01, 5:09 and 5:04. So we were settled in and we were ready to try and do some damage in this final 6 kilometres. Laura was hurting, but we were going to push, push, push and see how low we could go. Now, despite all the crowds, Laura and I had done very well not to trip over each other, and this point was the only time when she ran into the back of me, so I had to suddenly slow down for that gentleman, avoiding the statue horse. And here we see on the right the ultimate doggo of the Royal Parks Half Marathon. Well done to him. And as you can also see, we're getting a bit more crowded because we were catching up, I think, to the 2-hour pace group. And with the crowds on the side, it was harder to go around on the grass, and the paths were very narrow, and people were starting their sort of final pushes for the end. Luckily, as we passed the Royal Albert Hall, it got much wider, and Laura and I were free to really try and get that final finish. We were absolutely going for it, and I was trying to shout as much encouragement as possible. Here I am calling out 200 meters to go to Laura through the gates, and we are pushing.
Let's go.
Sadly for Laura, 200 meters to go was a small white lie, but in the last kilometre, anything goes. It's always about 100 meters, 200 meters to go as far as I'm concerned. The crowds were building, you could hear the announcers screaming. Luckily the finish line was right by a really tall building, so we knew that's exactly what we were aiming for, and she was absolutely going for it, along with other people. We were side by side. I could get a picture of that fantastic form of hers all the way to the end. She's keeping it, and she flies through the finish. Absolutely amazing. Look at those final 6 kilometres, 4:54, 5:04, 4:54, 5:03, and then a 1:56 for the last 400 metres. A massive, monumental effort from her. Her fantastic form kept up the entire way. And look at that, we have got PBs across the board. We've got 5k, 10k, 15k, 10 mile, 20k, and most importantly, that half marathon, a 1:46.06, an average pace of 5:02. Phenomenal running, and I know for a fact that Laura has got a lot more in the tank in the future for 5Ks and 10Ks and things like that. So follow along, subscribe, and we're going to be doing some more races together, and I'm going to be pushing and shouting at her even more to get her going even quicker. Right, that is the Royal Parks Half Marathon done. Laura came in with a 1:47.58, I think it was. Absolutely amazing. We were on the limit the entire time, but just under it. The perfect pacing. Thank you very much. Give myself some credit for that. It's all about Laura's effort. That was absolutely brilliant. What an event. I cannot, the amount of crowd support and people, it was so busy. But yeah, absolutely amazing. Highly recommend it. I'll yeah, do more recap in the actual video. So like, subscribe, keep on it.